Hello. Today we are reacting to Virgil Abloh, the fashion fraud. To be fair, I didn't see this coming. I thought Virgil Abloh was considered one of the greats in the fashion world. I'm not that well versed into the fashion world, but I didn't know that he was some sort of fraud or I didn't think people didn't like him for any reason. So let's figure out why.
Night shift.
Night shift.
Night shift.
The night shift.
Night shift.
When it comes to high fashion, originality is supposedly everything, but Virgil Abloh somehow managed to build a billion-dollar fashion brand by doing the complete opposite. Now don't get me wrong, he's been a pioneering creative. He was the first black artistic director at Louis Vuitton, the founder of Off-White, and to some, the creative genius that redefined street fashion. But when you take a closer look, the cracks in his rep do start to show. Because beneath the veneer of innovation was a designer who built his empire on borrowed ideas and lazy copy and paste tactics. But what makes it even more sinister is his greatest heist wasn't even a design at all, but it was stealing the dream of his closest friend and mentor, Kanye West. So today, we're going to take a look back into the life of Virgil Abloh and find out how he got away with being one of the biggest fashion frauds. Back into the
Look at this boy, Playboy Cardi. What is he? Why is he leaning up on Abloh? Oh, he's looking at
the biggest fashion
Offset's shoes or something. I don't know. It's just nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong. I just seen Zest and I just wanted to. There's nothing wrong with Zest. Let's keep going.
Of the 21st century, because once you start peeling back the layers of his career, it becomes painfully obvious that Virgil wasn't really a revolutionary. He was a remixer, and not even a subtle one.
Then a year after that, Bernard Arnault could have picked anybody he wanted to be the head of Louis Vuitton. And who was it? And as I got on that flight, I knew I had to go. Because if I didn't go and give Virgil that hug, who was I then?
You know, no one knows that I had been offered the deal by Bernard Arnault. No one knows that the deal was pulled.
That's what Off-White is different. Like, I love counterfeits. It's the best feedback. It's better than like a great review on Vogue.
Me and Virgil became rivals. This is the person I spent the most time in my life with my mom, the second most time with Kim, the third most time with Virgil in my entire life.
Oh man, I gotta use the bathroom. Where's Virgil's grave? Okay, so
that's so foul. Like, how do you go from? Okay, maybe we're about to figure out Virgil actually truly did him dirty, but to say something about a person like that's passed away, like they can't even defend themselves, or I don't know, it's just so foul, especially when it was somebody that was supposedly your best friend. Really sad.
Shout out to today's sponsor, the masters of male grooming, Manscaped.
No, thank you.
Get it. If you don't get Manscaped, you gon' need a Band-Aid. Helping 12 million men.
What? Bro, this man really went above and beyond for the sponsor. Shout outs to him. Good for him for doing something like that, but at the same time, I'm not here for it.
Before we get into how Virgil finessed his way into fashion's most exclusive circles, let's rewind back to where this all began. Born in 1980 to Ghanaian immigrant parents, Virgil grew up in Rockford.
Shout outs to Ghana. He just like me for real. Like half of my dad's Ghanaian.
Illinois, just a couple hours outside of Chicago. And unlike most successful fashion designers, his academic path had nothing to do with textiles or design. He got a bachelor's in civil engineering from the University of Wisconsin-Madison back in 2002, followed by a master's in architecture from the Illinois Institute of Technology. But while studying architecture, Virgil stumbled upon the work of a guy called Rem Koolhaas, an architect who had designed flagship stores for Prada. This seemingly random connection would spark something in Virgil. If this architect could cross over to the world of fashion, why couldn't he? During this time, Virgil was also part of Chicago's creative scene, running with artists, musicians, and designers while dabbling in DJing under the name Flat White. That's exactly how he would cross paths with Kanye West, who at this point was already establishing himself as a rising star in the music scene. Now, this link-up made a lot of sense. For one, Virgil and Ye were two ambitious Chicago kids with massive chips on their shoulders and a shared obsession with high fashion, the brands that would later obsess over them. The story goes that back in 2002, Virgil skipped his final architecture critique, likely the most important presentation of his entire degree, to meet with John Monopoly, Kanye's manager at the time. And what happened next was a bromance.
Is his name for real Monopoly? That's crazy. John Monopoly. That sounds. It sounds like the name you would give to like the mascot for the Monopoly game.
that the
Insane
pair would
name.
become practically inseparable. When Kanye went on his first self-imposed exile to Japan after the infamous Taylor Swift incident back in 2009, Virgil was by his side. And when Kanye decided that he needed to learn the fashion industry from the ground up and somehow managed to land an internship at Fendi, he made sure that Virgil got a spot too. And this wasn't the kind of internship that you would expect an already hugely successful rapper to do, something more akin to a viral marketing campaign. No, Ye and Virgil were actual interns who were reportedly paid just $500 a month. Now, to be fair, having done internships myself, usually you don't even get paid. But anyway, when their Fendi internship ended, Kanye would appoint Virgil as creative director of Donda, his creative agency named after his late mother.
He was really looking out for him, man. Like, that's a W man's.
And from there, Virgil would begin overseeing Kanye's merchandise, album art, and stage design, practically becoming the visual architect behind some of Ye's most iconic moments. He would serve as the art director for Kanye and Jay-Z's Watch the Throne album, earning a Grammy nomination, designing album covers for 808s and Heartbreak, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and Yeezus, as well
I had no idea he designed those covers. Those are legendary.
as working on stage designs for Kanye's tours, and he was even one of Ye's groomsmen when he married Kim Kardashian. But while Kanye was collaborating with top fashion brands like Louis Vuitton and trying to work his way to becoming their creative director, Virgil was quietly absorbing everything. He was watching how the luxury fashion machine operated, studying its hierarchies, its rules, and most importantly, where those rules could be bent or broken, as well as keeping a very keen eye on Kanye West and his ambitions. But before he could infiltrate the highest circles of European luxury, he would first need to build his own brand. And even that, he would start by screen printing on other people's clothes. Virgil's road to becoming one of the most famous clothing designers in the world started with several short-lived projects that played an important role in developing his style. In 2012, while still working with Kanye, Virgil would launch a clothing brand called Pyrex Vision. The concept was simple, if not slightly audacious. Buy dead stock Ralph Lauren flannel shirts for $40, screen print the word Pyrex and the number 23 on them, and resell them for an insane $550.
There's no way, bro. That's gotta be illegal. Is that not illegal? Can you really just do that? If so, I'm finna be a fashion designer real quick.
He was literally buying someone else's designs and marking them up over 1000% after adding minimal graphics. Of course, this shortcut-laden business model raised eyebrows, but it also revealed something fundamental about Virgil's approach to design. He wasn't necessarily interested in creating something from scratch or working hard, but he was treating fashion like a DJ treats music, sampling, remix, and recontextualizing existing elements without really adding too much of his own creativity, whilst also realizing that the success of clothing brands had actually very little to do with the clothes themselves and everything to do with the brand that was built around the clothing. Pyrex Vision would eventually shutter within a year, almost as quickly as it appeared, but Virgil would always have more than one project going at the same time, and at this point, he had become the part of a DJ and art collective known as Bean Trill, made up of members like Heron Preston, Florencia Galaza, Justin Saunders, Matthew Williams, and Virgil himself, and a mysterious member named simply YWP, which was rumored to have been none other than Kanye West himself, or Yeezy World Peace, an honorary member of the collective.
Shit for y'all to go to work to, ride to, listen to when y'all working out, when y'all, whatever y'all doing to provide a soundtrack for this shit that's gonna come out. We're gonna keep on doing this shit over and over and over, making shit from our core, from our gut, and it's with the creative director of Matt Williams and Virgil Abloh and the whole team, Don C, Ivan, all the Big Trill family, RSVP.
While Bean Trill would firstly focus mainly on music, they would soon begin also making clothing, and would quickly rise to become one of the most coveted streetwear brands around 2013, becoming known for their simple but bold graphics and internet-inspired aesthetics like the use of hashtags, and more than anything, their connections with many of the most popular artists at the time who would use and promote the brand, like Drake, Justin Bieber, and Chief Keef.
Yeah. So when it comes to like how brands or clothing even become popular, I feel like it's like he was saying, it's really just about the brand itself and what the space that they created around them, because good marketing and whoever's associated with said brand can really drive the reason why people want to wear things. Because I've seen people wear heinous clothes, like just ugly tattered garms, all because like maybe they've seen another celebrity or somebody that they find as somebody that they want to associate themselves with was wearing it. Like Balenciaga stuff, for example, like some of the Balenciaga shoes are really just like, I almost feel like that brand's making fun of you and the people that buy that stuff, because to me, it just looks like ass. Like all their clothes, maybe not all, because I don't really go too deep into it, but the stuff that I have seen, it just doesn't look good. But I think the buzz around the brand itself is just so big and so like controversial that people are just like down to have it just because people know what it is. Oh, you wearing Balenciaga, damn, look at blah blah blah. I don't know, just doesn't look good.
Who would famously even get his very own Free Keith t-shirt from the brand during his short stint in jail in 2013, which was even rocked by numerous fellow artists like Travis Scott, Soulja Boy, A$AP Ferg, and
he had
Rihanna.
The
And the
shortest
Collective would
little
even
dread braid
direct Keith's
thingies.
2013 music video for the song All Time, which was filmed almost entirely in front of a green screen and then filled with bold and psychedelic graphics, in many ways pioneering the style that's now a staple in underground rap music videos. But in the end, just like Pyrex Vision, Bean Trill's time as one of the most hyped about streetwear brands was relatively short, and the beginning of the end would start already in mid-2013, as the owners would seemingly decide to cash out, ditching the brand's former image as rare and expensive by striking a deal with PacSun, one of the largest retail chains in America focused on youth apparel, whilst the last nails in the coffin were surely collabs like these with Coca-Cola and Budweiser that follow. But once again at this point, Virgil had already left the ship to start another project, and this time he would take it further than anybody could have ever possibly imagined. This project, of course, being the brand Off-White. Launched in 2013, Off-White would take Virgil's sampling philosophy to new heights, or new lows depending on your perspective, and it would start with the very logo and visual identity of the brand itself. On the left here is the signage from Glasgow Airport, designed in the late 1960s.
He just stole the whole emblem for the brand is just the Glasgow Airport emblem. Once again, is this not trademarked? Like, can you just do that? I mean, I guess it is just arrows, but like, is this not a trademarked symbol?
Featuring diagonal stripes and an arrow motif, and on the right is Virgil's Off-White signature branding. Now,
but his has a black line on top, so it's different. It's different.
Similarities are, to put it mildly, striking. But even beyond this, fashion sleuths have pinpointed other elements of Off-White's visual identity that appear to be lifted from existing sources, right from the typefaces down to the graphic layouts. When asked about his copy and paste antics, Virgil would frequently defend his approach by comparing it to Duchamp's ready-mades and Andy Warhol's pop art. However, there's arguably a significant difference between Warhol openly transforming Campbell's soup cans into an obvious artistic commentary, and Virgil allegedly repackaging existing designs and quietly selling them as original creations. But whatever the case, with Off-White gaining momentum, Virgil was no longer Kanye's behind-the-scenes collaborator, he was now a competitor, and he was positioning himself for the biggest opportunity of his career, one that would cement his place in the fashion industry while simultaneously fracturing his decade-long friendship with the man who gave him his start. In 2018, Virgil was appointed men's artistic director at Louis Vuitton, making him the first black designer to hold such a position at the French luxury house. For anyone who'd been following the trajectories of both Virgil and Kanye, this announcement landed like a bomb, because this wasn't just any job, this was the job that Kanye had desperately been chasing for years. He was, after all, named the Louis Vuitton Don. All the way back in 2009, Kanye had made his first major deal with Louis Vuitton when he had designed a shoe collection for the brand. I remember having a fake pair of these back when I was in school, it was pop. And in 2016, Ye was supposed to finally take over as the company's creative director, replacing Kim Jones, the very same designer Ye had put on years earlier, back when he had hired him to work on his Pastel label. It would have been a full circle.
Ye put a lot of people on in terms of the fashion world. I had no idea.
Moment.
That's just two people, but it just seems like there's so much that goes on behind the scenes outside of just music and stuff. To be fair, I'm sure a lot of this stuff is probably well known to a lot of other people, but once again, I don't really dabble too deep into people's lives like that. But this is just very interesting to see, and it's sad to see that friends can snake each other, but at the same time, business is business. When you see an opportunity, sometimes the people that really want to take it to that next level, they just see it as opportunities and they don't really think of the impact that it might have on the people that you have around you. I don't know. Business can be a real evil world, man.
Even Kim himself reportedly recommended Ye for the job, and word was Louis Vuitton had agreed the position was actually his.
Bernard Arnault offered me a deal after the Yeezy Season 1 show to support the Kanye West brand, because we had 4 billion impressions, and it was the biggest fashion show of all time, like bigger than Victoria's Secret, bigger than Chanel. So Bernard Arnault had a meeting with me and looked me eye to eye and shook my hand and said, I'm going to do the Kanye West line.
This was happening during a time when Kanye's Yeezy brand with Adidas was already exploding in popularity, revolutionizing both the sneaker market and Ye's bank account. His shoes were selling out instantly, reselling for thousands, and turning him into one of the most successful designers.
The Yeezy influx was crazy. I still see people wearing Yeezys, like to this day. But man, those things were everywhere back in the day, dude. It was insane. Yeezys, he ran the shoe world for a while, or at least the streetwear shoe world, because you couldn't go down the street like at all back in those days, like without seeing at least 10 pairs of Yeezys. And it's, I don't know. Apparently they were really comfortable. I never had any because I don't know. I'm not really a person that just follows hype when it comes to fashion or shoes for anything. Also, they were expensive, and I was a broke boy back in the day, so there's also that.
Entrepreneurs in the fashion industry, but despite building what would eventually become a billion-dollar empire with Yeezy, Kanye still craved legitimacy from the fashion's old guard. No amount of commercial success seemed to satisfy his desire for acceptance from the elite fashion world that had long dismissed him. But then, the 2016 breakdown happened.
To give y'all my truth, even at the risk of my own life, even at the risk of my own success, my own career, I've been sent here to give y'all the truth. Jay-Z, call me, bro.
Unfortunately for Ye, this now infamous public meltdown spooked LV execs so badly that they would end up hitting the brakes. Kim Jones was asked to stay on board a little longer, and Ye's dream was quietly put on ice. But by 2018, LV was finally...
Before we keep going, that concert, like that whole, like, was that the Yeezus tour? Or the Life of Pablo tour? That I didn't realize that was already 8 years ago, man. I wanted to go to one of those shows so bad. Like, I have a friend that went to one in LA, like probably like the best one to go to. Like, it looked so insane. Yeezy has gone through some shit during the years, man, but I don't know. He's an iconic individual, to say the least.
Finally ready to make a decision, but by then, things had changed. Behind closed doors, they decided that Ye was too unstable to represent the brand, and instead, they handed the role to his closest protege, Virgil. A man who, by all accounts, was one of Kanye's closest friends, someone who had seemingly been quietly watching, learning, and maybe even plotting all along. And just when you think it couldn't get more cold-blooded, Virgil would hit Kanye with a call, allegedly just a few minutes before the news broke online, to let him know he had just taken the job that Kanye had spent almost 2 decades chasing. And then, when Virgil finally made his debut for Louis Vuitton at Paris Fashion Week, the crowd was psyched. But in the middle of all the hype, there was Kanye, front row, tears streaming down his face as he embraced his former protege at the end of the runway. Most people at the time probably saw this as a mentor overcome with pride at his student's success. But was Ye crying tears of joy, or was he mourning the dream that had secretly been snatched from him? The dark truth, like most things with Kanye, is probably all of the above. In that moment, he seemed to embody the conflict at the core of their relationship, formed from years of friendship and camaraderie, but also fierce competition, and ultimately jealousy and betrayal, as Kanye himself would later admit. At Louis Vuitton, it was impossible to deny Virgil's commercial impact. For one, his pieces were flying off the shelves fast, but also, Virgil's history of combining streetwear and high fashion helped LV reach a younger demographic while maintaining its prestige positioning. And while Ye's Yeezy shoes with Adidas were undeniably crushing it at the time, his broader fashion ambitions, particularly with the Yeezy clothing, was still hitting roadblocks after LV curved him and embraced Virgil instead. However, as time went on, it became clear that even after reaching the pinnacle of success, Virgil never grew out of his copy and paste habits, and as we'll soon see, it was only a matter of time before this habit would eventually catch the attention.
Do y'all think Yeezy would still be like the creative director if he was to get that job back in the day, like instead of Virgil? I feel like he probably would have been let go, because yes, I'm sure the stuff that he would have made probably would have been super iconic, but I don't know, that type of power probably would have gone to his head in some way, and he would have had some sort of crazy meltdown or some sort of extreme idea that LV probably would not try to get behind, and that'd be that. And then would it be Pharrell again? Who came directly after Virgil? Was it Pharrell? I know Pharrell is the creative director right now, but I don't remember.
And ire of other fashion creators. The first major heat Virgil caught for alleged plagiarism came shortly after his debut runway collection with Louis Vuitton, but the allegations concerned his own brand Off-White. In July 2018, Norwegian sportswear brand Helly Hansen sued Off-White for jacking their trademark diagonal stripe pattern that they had been using for 40 years, demanding Off-White destroy all products with those stripes and pay them damages. Some
Yikes.
Virgil fans tried to dismiss the lawsuit, pointing out that diagonal stripes are common in fashion, but this missed the point entirely. The issue wasn't just about stripes, it was about Virgil's habit of constantly lifting existing designs with minimal changes and passing them off as a revolutionary. So while his supporters would claim his genius was in repackaging ideas with an unmatched intensity, it was impossible to shake off the fact that this was laziness at best and theft at worst.
Once you've made it to this high of a level, plagiarizing is only going to get magnified like tenfold, you know? Like, you have to have seen this coming. Grant, I'm sure it made a lot of money, made a lot of sales, but you getting sued is probably not worth it, because now that you're representing such a high fashion house, like, you just plagiarizing something blatant like that is, I can't imagine that bodes well with Louis Vuitton or like any other company around. I don't know. Like, I feel like that could potentially, yes, you might make sales now, but if it comes out that like this brand is just plagiarizing other people, couldn't that just like downplay the validity of that brand to other people's eyes? Like, say people don't look at Louis Vuitton the same way anymore. Like, oh, they just copycats of, I don't know how people would want to think of that, but I don't know. It just seems kind of stupid to still be plagiarizing at this time, you know?
Because if you strip away the buzzwords and industry jargon like repackaging and recontextualization, what you're left with is a designer who built his career largely on other people's ideas. Even as the controversies piled up though, Virgil's carefully crafted persona as a trailblazer of fashion helped deflect the criticism. But for those paying attention, a troubling pattern was becoming impossible to ignore, as later that same year, Virgil would also be accused of copying an earlier Off-White design from the artist Luca Fontana, the inventor of an art movement known as spatialism, who Virgil admitted to being a fan of. The following year, in 2019, Virgil would allegedly steal from a young artist named Punk Zek, with Punk's mother Michelle Ellie calling out Virgil for copying her son's designs after they had met at his Paris presentation.
That's
but
crazy.
Virgil would brush off these accusations by framing his approach to design as part of streetwear's rich tradition of sampling and remixing. To some, this defense was basically a masterclass. This
man's stealing your idea and talking about something. It's just a remix, bro. Why are you so mad? Bro, you just took my whole flow bar for bar. Those were my stripes. Like, that's, I don't know, that is pretty foul, man. You should be ashamed.
In having your cake and eating it too, because unlike music, where samplers pay for clearance, or fine art, where appropriation is explicitly acknowledged as commentary, Virgil seemed to want it both ways, taking freely from others while building up his reputation as an innovative designer, and surprisingly, the fashion industry still ate it up. However, about a year later, Virgil would find himself knee-deep in another controversy, this time with Belgian designer Walter van Beirendonck, who again would straight up call out Virgil for directly copying patterns and designs from his fall 2016 collection, and this time using them in his Louis Vuitton Spring-Summer 21 collection. Both designs featured men's suits in primary colors with figure lines attached to the front of the jackets. Van Beirendonck would blast Virgil in the Belgian media, essentially calling him a talentless hack who couldn't create an original design to save his life. He would go even further as throwing a jab on Instagram with an outfit that simply read, "I hate copycats." In response, Virgil would claim his Louis Vuitton collection was inspired by the brand's own 2005 menswear show under Marc Jacobs, not Van Beirendonck's work. But fashion insiders quickly noted that the similarities to Van Beirendonck's designs were far more striking to any connection to LV's archive. The controversies would continue in 2021 when Walker Wear, a streetwear brand that had been dressing hip-hop royalty since the early 90s, would file another lawsuit against Off-White for allegedly plagiarizing their logo. According to the lawsuit, Virgil replicated a jacket design that they'd been using.
This man's a thief. He's not even trying to hide it. He just steals like the exact same like symbols, bro. How have you not learned your lesson? If this keeps happening, try something different, bro. Turn them into M's instead of W's or something, bro. You're bugging.
For almost 30 years and slapped a price tag of over $2,000 onto it. It seemed that there was an all too familiar pattern with Virgil's work, often feeling like a sophisticated game of spot the reference. But interestingly, when most designers get caught copying like this, they hide, deny the allegations, or even lawyer up. But Virgil didn't do any of that. Instead, he developed an entire philosophy around appropriation, essentially turning plagiarism into a whole design style. He called it the 3% rule, the idea that you only need to change something by 3% to make it your own.
Then I have my sort of like 3% approach. Right now, I'm only interested in editing something 3% from its original form. I'm basically tired. It might be too old, but...
Virgil would also compare himself to a DJ sampling music or a hip-hop producer chopping up old records, repeatedly defending his methods by saying his strength was in selection and recontextualization rather than pure creation. Now, this approach might work fine for an art school thesis, but when you're charging over $2,000 for...
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I can see where that mindset comes from when you're not profiting off of somebody else's stuff. Like, the fact that it's somebody else's work and you're not really giving them anything, like, that's where it's a problem. Like in music, yeah, like they were saying, you sampled somebody else's song, you still have to pay them some sort of royalties for sampling their beat or their song. But this is legit like just stealing somebody else's idea and changing the font slightly or something and saying that this was your idea from the get-go. Like, that's so fraudulent. And then you're charging way more because you're saying, oh, now it's backed by me and Louis Vuitton, and therefore it's way better than what you could have ever made, when it's technically you already made it. That's, I don't know, you got to give something back to the original creative for this to not be a problem. Clearly he didn't see it that way.
For a hoodie with someone else's design elements, things can get murky real fast. But just like with the time of Pyrex Vision, Virgil just didn't seem to care. And while his design fraud game was a hotly debated topic on the fashion scene for years, Ye's silence was deafening, at least until Virgil tragically lost his battle to cancer in 2021, at which point Kanye would finally break his silence, with all that hurt and bitterness that he'd kept inside eventually exploding out into the public eye. Years following Virgil's Louis Vuitton appointment, Kanye would maintain a public front of support for his former mentee. In fact, Kanye would consistently express pride in seeing someone from his circle achieve what had once seemed impossible for black designers, even though he was hurt about losing his creative director as well as his Louis Vuitton deal.
So the hurtful part was they agreed to support my clothing, and guess who was one of my designers? Virgil. Then they didn't do the deal.
They would also both go from success to success, Virgil with Off-White and Louis Vuitton, and Kanye with his Yeezy empire with Adidas, which would end up making him a billionaire in 2020. The same year, he would also strike a very lucrative deal with Gap, finally giving him the kind of creative leadership in fashion that he was promised years earlier. But keep it real, Gap ain't no Louis Vuitton. Then, after Virgil would pass away in November 2021, it would take even a year for Kanye's world to begin crumbling too, as his Twitter rants would bring an end to his partnerships with Adidas and Gap, and whatever was going on with Kanye, it would seemingly either change his feelings towards his old friend, or begin to finally bring out his true feelings towards Virgil that he had been bottling up all these years. And this would culminate in Ye's recent outbursts, as he would take to X on multiple occasions to air out his frustrations, saying, "Virgil let me down," and simply F Virgil. He would go on to drop the now infamous betrayal list, where he put everyone from his own kids to former collaborators on blast, and sitting right at the very top of that list was Virgil's name. These outbursts would also continue on streams that Ye would do too.
You put
in another
his kids
stream,
on there?
the diss would get even darker.
Niggas who go against me be dead, bro. Niggas who steal from me, bro. Look at Virgil, he dead, bro. Who steal from me and try to take the king position, be dead, bro.
Yeah, he's bugging, bro. Dude had cancer. Like, you're I don't know. Kanye's ego sometimes, it seems to like get overbearing, or maybe it boils up to the point where he starts having these like outbursts. Like sometimes he posts random things on Twitter, or maybe he says a lot of these things for the controversy to continue being in the public's eye, but it just looks bad. Business-wise, I'm sure there's benefits to him saying controversial things, but clearly he's losing business ties by saying these types of things. But maybe there is also truly some mental things going on with him, and maybe that's obvious, but it just seems like this is like a recurring thing for Kanye, at least in the past few years. It's sad to see. Maybe like losing your friend can lead to you wanting to have some sort of like mental outbreak, or leads to you breaking down in this way. But once again, man, I think he needs some serious like therapy, because like it's just like sad to see him fall down this path. Like Kanye was looked up to, at least for me, I looked up to Kanye crazy back in the days, man. And once again, I can still see him as someone that's like a creative or artistic genius, but at the other, like as a person, I could not stand behind 90% of the shit he says.
I gotta use the bathroom. Where's Virgil's grave? Okay, so, oh my God. One of the people that Virgil changed their lives is gonna come after you. So that means no one's coming after you.
And when asked about it in interviews, Kanye would double down with the story that we've now heard multiple times. The Louis Vuitton position was supposed to be his, that Virgil knew it, and just to twist the knife, that he went behind his back anyway. Now, whether Virgil actually betrayed Kanye maliciously or simply accepted an opportunity that had been handed to him is something that he took to the grave. But what's clear is that his decision to accept the job that had once been Kanye's dream left wounds that never healed. So where does this leave?
Well, in terms of that, it's seeming like Kanye probably was about to have that position, but then his rants kind of muddied the waters around that, and Louis Vuitton didn't want to bring someone on to be their creative director that's going crazy on stage or saying things that are absurd to the public. And maybe they were like, you know what, we also know Virgil is his creative director, maybe let's just bring him on. And maybe they were talking to Virgil behind Kanye's back, and it's maybe not even to do something foul on Virgil's end, to steal the job. But once again, that's a great opportunity. Are you gonna wait for your friend to approve of you having the job of your dream? You know, I know it was also Kanye's dream job, but clearly Louis Vuitton doesn't want him, and they want you now. So you might as well just take it. You're gonna wait for his permission? No.
Virgil's legacy? Was he a visionary who democratized fashion and broke barriers for black designers, or was he an opportunistic copycat who built an empire off the back of other people's ideas? The truth, as always, is somewhere in between. Perhaps more than a revolutionary designer, Virgil was a master marketer who had a deep understanding of branding as a foundational element of fashion. He realized from early on that the power of fashion is all about the story that the clothes are able to tell. Therefore, he wasn't just designing clothes, but building cultural movements. And that approach took him very far, to the point that there's no denying Virgil's impact on the fashion industry. He not only helped break down the artificial barrier between streetwear and luxury, but he became arguably one of the most well-known contemporary fashion designers. And as the first black designer to lead a major European luxury house, he kicked down doors that had long been closed to people who looked like him. For many young designers of color, seeing Virgil at the helm of Louis Vuitton was revolutionary. It was proof that they too could aspire to fashion's highest echelons, but there's also no denying the questions about his originality and integrity. The long trail of stolen design elements is too substantial to ignore, and his 3% rule raises some serious ethical questions about creative ownership in an industry built on original ideas. And perhaps even worse, he managed to convince young designers that ripping off other people's designs was not just acceptable, but downright clever.
Everyone talks about Virgil. He has that 4% rule. You see something you like, you change it 4%. Do you live by that?
I live by that. I with Virgil, but I think I'm gonna do it better than Virgil, because they call it a 2% rule. I call it take that shit.
So yeah, some might say branding him a straight up fool is harsh, but there's no doubt that he
I can see where that lowers the barrier for entry when it comes to creating clothing, where it's you just take other people's ideas and you just create something else, which is essentially just counterfeiting. And if it makes you money, I guess that's great, because maybe you started from humble beginnings and you really needed some money and you created something now that's making you a lot of money. But at the same time, in terms of the art of it all, the real dignity behind your work, people aren't really going to respect it. Or maybe they will, who knows? I feel like there's a market for everything, but I feel like for the most part, people won't really stand behind someone that's clearly just stealing somebody else's stuff. Or if they're stealing somebody else's stuff and putting it at a way cheaper, if it looks good on you, I guess you wear it. But some people are really brainwashed when it comes to brands and having to buy brands, or this brand was doing this and this. I don't know. The whole fashion world can get a little confusing. For me, when it comes to brand names, maybe every once in a while I'll buy something that just looks cool because of the brand. But for the most part, if I'm buying something, it's because it looks good on me, It's not because of the brand. It's mainly just how it fits me, or the materials, or the quality of that said item. That's my philosophy behind the clothes that I wear, at least.
Played fast and loose with the concept of originality, relying on his charisma, connections, and marketing savvy to paper over the cracks in his design credentials. Virgil, at the end of the day, was a master marketer, a dog designer, and a fickle friend.
Sounds like it. His marketing was, to this day, people still talk about him, clearly. He did he broke down some barriers that needed to be broken down, and great for him. That's a great thing that he did in terms of that. But in terms of like his style and designs, like it's sad to see that he was stealing from other people and not really giving them credit or any sort of like kickbacks, because he's stealing somebody else's whole entire style and then just up marketing the price or stealing it and changing it slightly and claiming that it's his own. That's, I don't know. I feel like from artist to artist, people probably don't respect shit like that. But what do I know? I'm not really in the fashion world, so really not for me to say. With that being said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch y'all next time.